Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Today is Thursday, July 16, 2020. Thanks so much for joining me. In the state of Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp, has banned any city, municipality, any part of the state from mandating masks, despite the severe outbreak of COVID-19, particularly across the South. Governor Kemp felt that it was his duty to make sure that the people of Georgia were not required to do what is perhaps the easiest and the most convenient thing possible to do in order to stop the spread. We've been talking about this for a little while here on the show, and it's just amazing that the level of liberty and freedom and patriotism that this country has devolved into is one that suggests that the best thing for your freedom, the most patriotic thing that you can do, the biggest signifier of your independence as a human being is the ability to not wear a mask in a damn pandemic. I think this is the epitome of American stupidity. It is the ignorance of America that is ultimately going to destroy America. No external enemy is ever going to destroy America. Not before our own ignorance destroys it. There was a rally or a city council meeting in the state of Utah last night. And I'm going to put the video on the screen for those of you who are watching and for those of you who are listening. It's a lot of ruckus, but it's basically a jam-packed room of white people. Half of them don't have on. Probably the majority of them are not wearing masks, and they are there to protest the possibility of the city council enforcing a law for everyone to wear a mask. They are in an enclosed space with probably, every bit of it's a petri dish. Let me skip all the descriptions. It is a petri dish. I guarantee you someone last night in that room contracted COVID-19 because too many people were not wearing masks and there was absolutely no social distancing. But they were so passionate. They were so passionate about their right to not be forced to wear a mask that these fools, these morons are willing to die. This is the crown jewel statement of their liberty, of their freedom. This is their greatest expression of their patriotism, is the refusal to wear a mask in a pandemic. America is screwed, my friends. We have been saddled with the level of stupidity and ignorance that is going to get even more people killed. And this is not the end of it. If and when we survive COVID-19, we are going to see, unless it's the case that COVID-19 actually wipes out most of these morons. I don't want that to be the case, but their behavior suggests that they are going to be super spreaders. Even if they're asymptomatic and they're going around spreading it because it is their liberty, it is their patriotic right, it is their greatest expression of Americanism to refuse to wear a mask, subsequently putting everyone they come in contact with at risk. And so while it would be beneficial for the future of humanity if this level of stupidity was self-destructive, to put it nicely, if Darwinism won out here, it's a survival of not the fittest, but survival of the people with the most common sense. because if that was the case, then our future would look bright. But these people are going to survive. These people are going to be just fine. And they're going to end up killing innocent people. People who are actually trying to avoid the pandemic, avoid this coronavirus. People who are actually taking this seriously. And if and when we get past COVID-19, this level of stupidity is going to remain in America, and it will only escalate from here. It was never going to be Russia, China, any other power, whoever they're scaremongering over this week. Last week it was Russia. This week is going to be China. Everybody's like, oh, it's a Chinese hoax, and then it was the Chinese flu to get everybody to turn their energy away from the incompetence of this government and focus it on China, right? It was never going to be any of these powers that we try to scaremonger around all the time. It was always going to be American ignorance. COVID-19 is the pandemic. American ignorance is the plague. It is what's causing the pandemic to spread. It is the wind that this virus is spread on. I mean, just think about, in that meeting last night, a woman held up her baby, a baby without a mask. I mean, the level of ignorance around COVID-19, it is exposing a level of ignorance in this country that is unfathomable. It's like, it's a level of ignorance that puts your own self-interest secondary to your derangement. Most people will play, for example, Chuck Woolery, I think that's how you pronounce his last name, the game show host. Rabid Republican, right-wing conservative Republican, anything for Donald Trump. Matter of fact, Donald Trump retweeted one of his 2 last tweets. And I'll read them to you. But before I read it to you, just give you the synopsis. Chuck Woolery, playing games on social media. Playing games, playing the stupid game, the ignorant game of don't take this seriously. Turns out his son, within 15 hours of his ridiculous tweet, he had a tweet out that his son is sick with COVID-19. And so now he's deleted all of his social media platforms, or at least that they were deleted as of yesterday. Yeah, play stupid games, you get stupid rewards. But in his case, he finally, I don't know, maybe it dawned on him, now it got close enough to home, he sees that it's not fake, he sees that it's not a hoax, and he's decided, okay, I'm bowing out. I'm bowing out. And this is not to take up for, matter of fact, let me read his tweets first. He said, the most outrageous lies are the ones about COVID-19. Everyone is lying. The CDC, media, Democrats, our doctors, not all, but most, that we are told to trust. I don't know what his punctuation was doing there, but anyway, I think it's all about the election and keeping the economy from coming back, which is about the election. I'm sick of it. Less than 15 hours later, he says, to further clarify and add perspective, COVID-19 is real and it is here. My son tested positive for the virus, and I feel for those suffering and especially for those who have lost loved ones. Well, you moron, it was real before your son got it. I mean, so I bring him up because I guess there was a limit to his ignorance. There was a breaking point. The breaking point was when his son got it, and he deleted his social media accounts, and now I guess he's at home taking care of his son. But that's not the case in so many instances. People's ignorance goes beyond their own personal self-interest, goes beyond the interests of their family members. They are putting their family at risk because of their stupidity and this derangement in their mind. The derangement in their mind that the most American thing they could possibly do is resist wearing a mask. These are the same people who feel like we should shut up about police brutality. So to them, it is more offensive for them to have to wear a mask than it is what happened to George Floyd. Do you see the sociopathy that we're dealing with? These people are not well. They're not well. And the sickness that they suffer from is sheer stupidity, ignorance, bigotry, hypocrisy. And the thing is for years we've been able to kind of compartmentalize and just, allow them to be them. Like you can't really, what can you do about someone being ignorant? What can you do about people weaponizing ignorance for political ends? Right? It's just, you gotta, in this world of information, in this information age, if people choose to buy into the most ridiculous, asinine, ass-backwards conspiracy theories just so that they can preserve their worldview, what were you supposed to do? But now their ignorance is spreading a virus that is getting people killed. I can't even tell you how many times I rarely delete comments on Facebook, and I just welcome all the trolls on Twitter. It's like whatever. But how many times I've seen people come into the comment section on Facebook and saying like, oh, all this information is just false. The CDC information is false. Says who? Your cousin who sent you a chain letter that's talking about the vaccine's going to include the mark of the beast? Do you hear how stupid you sound, you morons? Do you hear yourselves? You think that 140,000 people are dead, or actually just you reject that notion. Like you can't physically go and look at the obituaries. In Houston, they had 40 pages of obituaries. this weekend. I mean, if you really don't believe this is real, you can call the morgues, you can call the funeral homes and just talk to them about how they don't have space for the bodies. But it's not about whether or not COVID-19 is real or not, because deep down, you know it's real. But you can't handle the reality that if for 1 second you take this thing seriously and stop buying into the ridiculous, these conspiracy theories that make you would rather look like a moron and put your family at risk. You would rather engage in the highest level of ignorance and stupidity and allow your family members to die than to come to grips with the fact that you have embraced an ideology and a political party and a political philosophy that is suicidal, that is ignorant, that is rooted in stupidity and bigotry. And now that bigotry and ignorance is going to get people you love killed. And another thing, I'm sorry. I am livid. I am so enraged at the amount of ignorance that controls this country, both from the top down and the bottom up. From the top, we have the president of the United States, who is the epitome. He is the quintessential example of a fucking moron. There's really no other way. He is the dumbest. He has to be by far the most ignorant and asinine president that we have ever had in the history of this country. And I don't even care that there were presidents that couldn't read before. This has nothing to do with the capacity to read. Donald Trump is presiding over the deaths of 140,000 Americans. And I guarantee you at least 50% of them did not have to die. But they did die simply because of the recklessness with which he handled this virus. So there's a level of ignorance coming from the top of this country. But the ignorance that is so disconcerting is the ignorance that's coming from the bottom up. And I mean, literally coming from the people, right? This has become a feedback loop. The ignorance was first fed from and just was just drenched. The only thing that trickled down to this country was this ignorance, right? Trickle down economics. There was no money that trickled down to this country, but the ignorance to believe such a fallacious economic ideology and political philosophy that trickled down, right? And so it came from the top down, and the people were always there. There are always going to be people who are willing to engage in the most ridiculous and fatuous, asinine, ass backwards, just ignorant behind beliefs. They will embrace them because, I don't know, it's a part of human nature that we could be naive or willingly and intentionally obtuse. Whatever the case is, this isn't, I don't take what I'm getting ready to say to think I have any sympathy for these morons, because I don't have any sympathy for them, right? But I do believe that it is a part of human nature to be able to fall prey to things like this, especially when you mix in the bigotry, especially when you mix in all of the animus, the hatred. I mean, it's so much easier to fall prey to the most ridiculous beliefs, the most backwards thinking that is peddled by people in power in order to galvanize you and to collect you into their own following so that they can get political power, so that they can get economic power. Let me see if I can make it plain. I think all of us have a propensity to be susceptible. I can't even make it. Can I say this one? Every one of us could be a sheep. If we're not careful, every one of us could be a sheep. But it's our responsibility to get some analytical skills about us. Like, it's our responsibility to have some kind of thinking capacity, something that goes beyond whatever ridiculous thing is necessary to keep your worldview intact, to confirm your biases. See, that's why this is working the way it's working right now. It's not just that you have the predator at the top preying on the ignorant sheep at the bottom. It's that the sheep at the bottom want to protect their worldview. The people who are out here fighting against the mask, this isn't about the mask. They could breathe just fine in the mask. This is about the fact that they have to protect themselves from ever admitting that they have supported a worldview that has now killed 140,000 Americans. Because if they ever slow down and consider that possibility, it would cause a level of cognitive dissonance, like they might stroke out, right? When you are confronted with information that contradicts or exposes you, right? It exposes you. When you are confronted with information that exposes you, it causes you emotional, physical, and mental anguish. It hurts. Nobody wants to confront the fact that they have been wrong. And some people, instead of confronting the fact that they have been wrong and that they have supported a president who has now presided over the deaths of 140,000 Americans and probably going to be 200,000 Americans before he's gone out of office, instead of doing that, they've embraced death. They would rather die than to admit to themselves and their family members and to the people on social media, like, this really could be boiled down to the fact that they don't want to have to admit on social media that they were wrong. They have been enjoying the schadenfreude. They've been enjoying the recklessness of Donald Trump. They've been enjoying the pettiness, the trollishness of Donald Trump. They've been reveling in the cruelty. They have loved every second of this shit. And now that the chickens are coming home to roost and their loved ones are dying, they are saying to themselves, I would rather die. I would rather you die than for me to ever have to confront the fact that we have supported a narcissistic megalomaniac who is a sociopath and has no regard for anyone's life. Donald Trump has no regard for the life of anyone. Not even you, who have been online his best supporter. But instead of confronting that reality, because that's too difficult, it'll make their head hurt. They don't want to go through that. Instead of embracing that reality, they have embraced death. And they have wrapped all of this dilemma that they face. They are facing a dilemma, right? Motherfuckers are dying. People are really dying. But instead of confronting that dilemma that is rooted in their support of a man who would rather see this country die than to ever concede that to ever have anything bruise his ego, whatever his motivations are. I'm tired of analyzing Donald Trump. We got to figure out these 36%, the 46% of Americans who still think he's doing a good job. And I believe that the reason that they still think he's doing a good job is because they would rather die, literally, than to ever admit that they have supported a president, a philosophy, a political philosophy, and an economic philosophy. Their entire worldview is rooted in ignorance, lies, propaganda, bigotry, and cruelty. And that cruelty has now come back to be to completely undermine this nation, to kill 140,000 people. And instead of confronting that reality, instead of dealing with that cognitive dissonance or confronting that dilemma, more than cognitive dissonance, it's a dilemma. Instead of confronting the dilemma and the realization that they have empowered a megalomaniac, right? And that they have been a part of a paradigm of a political philosophy and a worldview that is destructive even to the people who adhere to it. It would be different if this conservative delusion and derangement was something that only damaged and harmed liberals. But what these people believe is damning to themselves. And instead of confronting that dilemma, they embrace all of the ridiculousness that you see them embracing. That's why they have QAnon. QAnon is here to give them a fantastical escape away from the fact that they are complicit with one of the most cruel and ridiculous, asinine and ignorant philosophies and political ideologies on the face of the planet. And they're supporting the crown jewel of that idiocy, who is Donald Trump. Instead of confronting that, they have all gone into this derangement that is QAnon. And instead of confronting the fact that their president is responsible for the number of Americans who are dying, they would rather make a culture war out of it so that they can feel good about refusing to wear a mask because it's the patriotic thing to do. It's the American thing to do. You gotta adapt. This coronavirus isn't even real. This is the idiocy that's coming from the bottom up. And it's not even necessary to be driven from the top. It's approved by the top. Donald Trump is just fine with it. Brian Kemp is fine with it. I don't care. Even if he's capitulating to the demands of the people, he's still fine enough with the fact that this is going to get people killed enough to make sure that states and cities, rather, and municipalities don't institute a requirement to wear a mask. He's okay with it enough. He's okay with this derangement because he benefits from it. He gets economic and political power from it, just like Donald Trump. So it becomes a feedback loop of ignorance. Ignorance fed from the top, but ignorance that's necessary to maintain this dilemma, to never confront the dilemma that's at the bottom. The millions and millions of people who still support this man, even though he is doing things that are going to kill him, the only way they can survive that dilemma without confronting themselves and confronting how wrong they are, well, is to embrace QAnon and to embrace the idiocy of refusing to wear a mask because they think it's the patriotic thing to do. It was never going to be war that took America out. It was always going to be American arrogance and American ignorance.
Tell me how a president in the middle of a pandemic has got time for this bullshit. Are you kidding me? Hawking products, Goy, I don't care who it is. Resolute desk. This is what he's resolute about. Pandemic priorities. His daughter Ivanka, top White House advisor. Are you kidding me? Marketing for a brand, following calls for boycotts after Goya's CEO heaped praise on Trump last week. On your dime, in the middle of a pandemic, they're selling beans? Are you kidding me? Seriously. This is not left and right. This is reasonable, my brothers and sisters. The guy's sitting on the Resolute desk with a bunch of Goya products.
Chris Cuomo is tired of it. It's tired of it. I mean, look. I am not in the business of like nitpicking anymore. I can't nitpick the fact that anything about Chris Cuomo's career or whatever. This has got to stop. This has got to stop. The madness, the absurdity of it all. The president of the United States. Here's the thing, folks. We play it close all the time with the existing regime. The existing regime that I've talked about at great length. I break it apart down all the time, and people can see it for themselves. You can read about it almost anywhere. It's a known fact. We have one power structure in this country, one regime, two warring factions in that single regime, but they basically agree on the same things. And even at our best, it's untenable. It creates what this system creates right now. Look at it this way. You've got not a single person in any state who makes a minimum wage can afford a 1-bedroom apartment in that state. Okay. That was a condition that existed before Trump. That condition is going to exist after Trump because, well, this regime agrees that that's acceptable. I bring that up in context of the absurdity of Trump and the Goya beans because on our best day, the regime that is in power right now is always has us on edge. Always has the American people living like hand to mouth, struggling. But when you go one step further and you bring in the obscene ignorance and absurdity of a moron like Donald Trump, you compound all of the horrific problems with the existing regime that needed to be changed all along. Like, getting rid of Donald Trump doesn't change the fact that we need to get rid of this regime. Right? Again, I want to restate that. A person working 40 hours a week, making minimum wage, cannot afford an apartment anywhere in this country, in any state. Donald Trump compounds that crisis with the crisis of his own creation, rooted in his ego and megalomania. We got to change this entire system.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. At this point in every single episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank the people who make the show possible, our patrons. Very special welcome to JJ Boyles. Thank you for becoming a patron. Antonio Scarlata, thank you for becoming a patron. And N. Connor Campbell, thank you, sir, for becoming a patron. Now, everybody just bop your head. You too can become a part of this prestigious and prodigious patron family by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show, where you get twice the content, uncut, unfiltered, and unedited interviews, none of the commercial interruptions, and you give me the ability to speak truth to power and power to the powerless, whether the powerful like it or not.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yep. Let's go. Welcome back. All right. Let me put a fine point on what I was saying before the break, because I don't think I got it out clearly enough. America has enough problems. And when I say enough, America has enough problems for us to call for a regime change. The current regime that we have. Not just Donald Trump. I want to put a fine point on this. The problems that we have in this country that are the core of the dilemmas that so many Americans face, they predated Donald Trump. Okay? But when you add Donald Trump into the mix, nothing was fixed. Nothing was made better. Everything actually was made worse. All of the indicators, everything, I mean, it has not gotten better for anybody. Period. So when you add Donald Trump into the mix, when you add his chaos, he is a chaos agent, into the mix, you take a situation that was tenuous at best, like we were barely surviving. We had enough reason to get pitchforks and torches and tar and feather and march to the Capitol and throw the bums out. But now you've added on a chaos agent who revels in all of the chaos that he creates, all because it serves his ego. And the dilemma that we face now more than ever before is the underbelly of ignorance that just runs through this country. The ignorance that is so pervasive in this country, and the unwillingness of people to pause and reflect on what they believe. Because it is a difficult thing to challenge all of your preconceived notions, to challenge things that your entire community believes, right? To challenge things that your parents believe, to challenge things that you want to believe. It's a difficult thing, and people would rather embrace the ignorance. Like it's not even a consideration. They're not even consciously making the decision in some cases. They just run towards any fanciful, any ridiculous, asinine, just all out ridiculous notion possible. They'll run to that and embrace that versus sitting down and considering. And then you have the other folks in this country who really sit down and believe that they have found a new way of thinking about life, and they have this false epiphany, and then like this just they really have contemplated on these things. They really have sat down, and the result of their contemplation is the same ignorance that we see. It's like it's people who think that they are woke, but their wokeness aligns with some of the most asinine thoughts imaginable. Like the people who are part of QAnon, they honestly believe that they are woke, that they have been awakened to some mysterious knowledge that no one else has, and everyone else is blind but them. You know? So it's not just the ignorance of people who have not taken any time to contemplate anything, because if they thought about it too long, would undermine their entire worldview. It would just be ground shattering, earth shaking. It would turn their world upside down, and they're not ready. So it's not just those people who refuse to contemplate things because it would undermine their entire philosophy of life. It's also those people who believe that they have found, like, this unbelievable source of knowledge, and everything that comes out of their mouth is the stupidest shit that I've ever heard in my life. You know? So we're dealing with layers of ignorance. We're dealing with layers of ignorance. And to a greater or lesser extent, all of these layers of ignorance have been weaponized for political and economic ends. This is how Donald Trump got into power, right? This is how the Republican Party maintains their power, right? It's how conservatism in general refuses. It's how they refuse to even consider the science. They just reject science because there's just so much I have to say about this. I'm running out of time. My music is coming up, so I might as well just throw in the towel here. There's just so much more for me to talk about. I'll give you a personal story of mine that puts all of this in context. Patreon.com/the BPD show. Patrons, stay tuned. Everybody else, I'll see you tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.